Have you ever wondered how one person's life can change the entire course of history? Today, we're diving into one of history's greatest what-ifs. What if Alexander the Great, the young Macedonian king who conquered the known world, hadn't died at just 32? What if he had lived for 10 more years? Grab your popcorn, because we're about to rewrite history. In 323 BC, Alexander lay on his deathbed in Babylon, fever-racked and weakened. His vast empire, stretching from Greece to India, held its breath. When he died, it shattered, carved up by his generals, the Diadochi, in decades of bloody conflict. But what if he had recovered? What if he had another decade to shape the world he had conquered? First, let's talk about consolidation. Alexander's empire was a patchwork of newly conquered territories, held together by his charisma and military genius. With 10 more years, his primary goal would have been to solidify his rule. He would have established a clear line of succession, likely with his son Alexander IV, preventing the power vacuum that tore his empire apart. He would have continued his policy of cultural fusion, a concept we call Hellenization. He would have built more Alexandrias, not just as military outposts, but as bustling centers of Greek and local culture, trade, and learning. Imagine Greek philosophy being debated in the heart of Persia and Persian art influencing Greek architecture. This fusion would have gone deeper, creating a more unified and stable Greco-Persian civilization that might have lasted for centuries. His administrative reforms would have been revolutionary. He likely would have appointed more local governors alongside his Macedonian officers, creating a more balanced and representative government. He would have standardized currency, laws, and languages across his empire, making trade and communication seamless from the Adriatic Sea to the Indus River. This unified economic zone would have spurred unprecedented prosperity. The Silk Road, as we know it, might have started centuries earlier, with secure trade routes connecting the Mediterranean directly to the east. But Alexander was never one to sit still. His ambitions were boundless. Before his death, he was planning a massive expedition to conquer the Arabian Peninsula. Why? Resources, trade routes, and the simple fact that it was there, unconquered. With his battle-hardened veterans and unparalleled strategic mind, it's almost certain he would have succeeded. Capturing Arabia would have given him control over the lucrative incense and spice trade, further enriching his empire and securing its southern flank. And after Arabia, the world was his oyster. To the west lay Carthage, the great naval power of the Mediterranean, and the burgeoning Roman Republic. To the east, the unconquered kingdoms of India beckoned. Where would he turn? My bet is on the west. Alexander was a man obsessed with legacy and glory. The idea of conquering the lands that birthed the Trojan War heroes, of surpassing the legends of Heracles, would have been irresistible. He would have turned his attention to Carthage, Sicily, and Italy. The Punic Wars between Rome and Carthage might have been entirely different. Instead of fighting each other, they might have formed a desperate alliance against the Macedonian juggernaut. Could Rome have stood against Alexander? In 313 BC, Rome was still a regional power, not the imperial behemoth it would become. Its legions were tough, but they had never faced anything like Alexander's combined arms tactics. The unbreakable Sarissa phalanx, the devastating companion cavalry, and the brilliant siegecraft. It's highly probable that Alexander would have defeated the Roman Carthaginian forces. He wouldn't have just defeated them, he would have absorbed them. Rome, instead of becoming the center of a world-spanning empire, might have become a provincial capital in a greater Macedonian one. The Latin language, Roman law, and the entire foundation of Western civilization would have been overshadowed by Greek culture. We might be speaking a form of Greek today, and our legal systems might be based on Athenian principles instead of Roman ones. What about India? Alexander had been forced to turn back from the Indian subcontinent by his mutinous, homesick army. With a consolidated empire and fresh troops, a return to the east would have been inevitable. He would have pushed past the Hyphasis River, encountering the powerful Nanda Empire. A clash between Alexander's forces and the Nanda's massive army, with its thousands of war elephants, would have been a spectacle for the ages. Given his track record, it's hard to bet against Alexander. A victory would have brought the entire Indian subcontinent into the Hellenistic sphere. Imagine Greek gymnasiums in Pataliputra, the Nanda capital. The exchange of ideas would have been staggering. Indian mathematics and philosophy, including early Buddhist thought, could have flowed westward much earlier, profoundly influencing Greek thinkers. Plato and Buddha in conversation? It's the kind of fusion Alexander's world could have created. The religious landscape would also be dramatically different. Alexander himself was declared a son of Zeus Ammon and fostered a ruler cult. This divine kingship would have become the standard for his empire. This dominant Hellenistic paganism could have presented a major obstacle to the spread of monotheistic religions. Judaism might have remained a more localized faith, and Christianity, if it emerged at all, might have struggled to gain a foothold in a world dominated by the cult of the divine king. The entire spiritual development of the Western and Middle Eastern worlds could have followed a completely different path. With 10 more years, Alexander the Great wouldn't have just expanded his empire. He would have cemented it. He would have created a single, unified cultural and economic entity stretching from Spain to India. This Alexandrian ecumene would have accelerated scientific discovery, cultural exchange, and economic growth on a scale never before seen. The Library of Alexandria, under his direct patronage, would have become an even greater repository of all human knowledge. The scientific revolution might have happened 1,000 years earlier. We might have had steam engines in the Roman era or explored calculus alongside the great Greek geometers. But would it have all been for the better? An empire built on the vision of one man is fragile. Without Rome's gradual, law-based expansion, would this massive Hellenistic empire have been stable? Or would it have collapsed even more spectacularly upon Alexander's eventual death? Perhaps the rise of Rome, with its emphasis on republicanism and law, was a necessary step for the development of Western society. Perhaps history, in its chaotic way, found the right path. The death of Alexander the Great at 32 is one of history's greatest tragedies and most fascinating turning points. His early demise left a power vacuum that led to chaos, but also allowed for the independent rise of cultures and empires, like Rome, that define our world today. 10 more years could have given us a unified world, a golden age of Hellenistic culture, but it might have also snuffed out the sparks of innovation that ignited elsewhere. What do you think? Would a longer-lived Alexander have created a utopia or a global dictatorship? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. It's a question that shows just how fragile history is, and how the life of one single person can truly and utterly change the world. Thanks for joining me on this journey through alternate history. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more content, and ring that bell so you never miss a what if. Until next time, stay curious.